So I feel very impressed today to tell you of a few experiences that I had in life that were meaningful. Okay. And it is the case that there have been many things in my life that are meaningful, but also the case that, meaningful is a measure of your understanding and perception of what's going on and your spiritual tuning. Your spirit collects that which you perceive in extended range, even universally, and is even the vehicle of your soul. If you're ever trained in or an expert in something called remote viewing, which is, as a CIA asset, you may understand exactly what I'm talking about. It is the ability to be there without being there. That's an example of utilizing your spirit and tuning in order to jump to any place at any time and to witness it. That is by the power of the Spirit. So those of you who can view, I have a challenge for you. And I'm just going to out and say it because I can now. I know the three Nephites. Who are the three Nephites? Well, if you want to know that, there's a book you need to read. And it's a good one, too. So, let's go through it. How did I come to meet the three Nephites? Well, when I was a boy of about 10 years old, I think 10 years old, in the early summer in Logan, Utah of 1991, I went to a place that we just called First Dam. There's a river that flows out of the mountains, and there's a series of 3 dams. There's First Dam, Second Dam, and Third Dam. The lowest dam down the flow of the river and the largest is First Dam. And there's a little park there, and there was when I was young also, where right at the inlet to the reservoir, there's a little footbridge just past the overpass of the highway. And the river flows under this. And I was there to basically just run around, me and my brother. And he had gone up the river to fish a little bit because the fish are bigger there. And if you know the area, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The really big trout hang out just above the reservoir, and they don't go down into it. And that's why they're big. Okay. So, he was interested in that, and I was interested in, well, I wanted to swim, but the water was kind of cold. I had this little gay pink inner tube and like a little blow up inflatable. And I was trying to, in my mind at the time, in my 10-year-old mind, I was trying to recreate a scene out of The Longest Day where the commandos are disarming a bridge that's set to be blown because it's one of their objectives. And so they hang on to the bridge and they shimmy across the bridge, hanging off of it. And that's what I was doing on this footbridge. I was pretty strong. I could just, I could do that. But I also had clasped in my legs that stupid little inner tube. For some reason. I don't know what I was going to do with it, but I dropped it. And then when I did, the water started taking it away because there's a current there. And I turned around and I decided, well, I'm just going to reach out and get it. And when I turned and twisted with hanging on with my left arm, which wasn't generally a problem, I could hold myself up just fine and pretty much do pull-ups with my left arm. I reached down with my right arm, and the twisting of it, I slipped off the bridge, and into the water I went. It was early enough in the season, the water was still cold from snow melt. And I hadn't even stuck a toe in yet. That water was so cold. I went into it, kerplunk, and I went into shock immediately. And I couldn't move. And the current started taking me away, around the bend, and toward the reservoir. And I couldn't move. I was like this in the water, with my face sticking out. And no one saw me fall in. I started to struggle, but I couldn't really move. I was in the water. And I realized that I couldn't swim. I could swim, I couldn't move. I was in shock, I couldn't move. And I knew I was gonna die. So I just quit moving. And I let the current take me. I became a little more buoyant as I went, and my ears came up out of the water. And from the shoreline near, I heard, "Hey! Hey, you need to swim. You need to swim. Come toward me. Come toward me." And there was this guy there. He was standing there. He had kind of dishwater blonde hair. He had blue eyes. He was wearing a plaid shirt, tucked into his jeans, and some brown, like, hiking shoes. Regular looking guy. But he said, "Come on, you can do it. You need to do it. You need to move your hands. You need to swim. Come toward me." He said, "Come toward me. Come toward me. Like this. Come here." And so I kind of started snapping out of it. Like, okay, I gotta move, and I can. And so I did. And it was clunky at first, but I just kind of started swimming toward him. And he was the only one in sight. There was no one else. And I swam up to the shoreline, And I was very tired. That took all the wind out of my sail, and I crawled up on the shoreline to his feet. And I looked up at him, and he looked down at me. He just kind of looked at me. He didn't say anything. He just kind of looked at me. And I stood up to my feet. And I just looked back at him. And I remember his face. I know what he looks like. For you remote viewers, see if you can see this. And then next, what did he say? Right. He goes, now you'll be all right. And he turned around and walked away. Sorry, now you're going to be okay. And then he turned around and walked away. Testing you. Okay. So, did I know he was one of the three Nephites at the time? No. Did I know he was maybe either an angel or sent by angels? No doubt. Nobody saw me go in that water. There was no one around. There weren't even cars parked. And he didn't have a car. He just showed up. And if you're familiar with that area, a little face sticking up out of the water and that much water going that speed, you're not going to see it. He didn't touch me. Later on, I drew Helen like my recollection of it I was telling her, and I drew it, and the way I depicted that in my picture was that he was grabbing me by my shirt and pulling me up out of the water. But in my mind, it might as well have been that, because I was going to be a dead little 10-year-old. And he saved my life. One of many instances where my life was saved from certain death. So that was in 1991. Many years later, in 2006, January, I had passed going to basic training for the Navy. There were reasons I expressed to the Navy why I wasn't going from delayed enlistment program into basic training. And even the state regional commander called me at my desk at work and wanted to know. I had expressed that, well, I had this work opportunity and corporate home office was offering me a job, which was a false offer. George Armstrong, you know. Anyway, the reason that I did not go into the Navy was this. They told me this in the recruiting station, and they were very clear about this for me. They said, we do not talk about submarine operations ever. and you will be on a submarine. I wouldn't be able to be talking to you now if I had gone. And so I couldn't. Did I swear in with the Navy? Yes. I just got dipped out a little early. Okay. We'll leave it at that. So, in the week following my order date to show at basic training, this happened. I received a call from the Lubbock Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a church down in Lubbock, but I was in Amarillo. And there was a very sharp missionary who contacted me. And I was struggling at the time with many things. I was in a very intense spiritual battle at the time. Very intense. A lot like 2021. Just like 2021. Except, well, my first time through something that scale. But anyway, the missionary asked me, do you're a member, do you go to church? I said, no. He said, well, why not? And I told him, well, I've been in a lot of places, and almost everywhere I go, I'm rejected by my peers. And he was very prompt with his answer, and he said, well, Satan has many methods at his disposal or to use that discourage you from your spiritual growth. Something to that effect. And he asked me, can we come and talk to you at your house? I said, okay, sure. And a few days later, these two missionaries from Lubbock came to my apartment. I lived at the Three Fountains Apartments in Amarillo, Texas. On the south facing of the building, about midway, favoring the west. So, I answered the door, and they were both. There was definitely a senior companion and a junior companion. They were both very interesting looking fellows. They had very serious countenance. They have very good tans, both of them. Dishwater blonde hair, both of them. Blue eyes, both of them. Sharp and just well maintained, both of them. And the older one looked like he was about 25, and the younger one looked maybe 22. Neither one of them looked young enough to be a missionary. I immediately thought that was interesting. I was like, okay, guys, come on in. And in my living room at the time, I had a big American flag, big one, on display hanging in my living room. And walked in, and the elder companion, who pretty much did all of the talking, said, "Oh, well, that's a pretty nice flag. It's big." I said, "Yeah, greatest country on earth." And I smiled at him, and he just kind of goes, or he smiled, but it was like this. I was like, "That's odd. What an odd smile." And he just kind of left it at that. He came in. I was like, "Yeah, please sit down," you know. And Helen was with me in this, and so I sat down in a chair facing them away, and Helen sat in the corner recliner by the couch, and we talked a little bit. Okay. And he said, okay, you know, to all of that. He said, "Well, may we share a message with you?" I said, "Sure. Sure." And see if you can find this in your Book of Mormon, because it used to be in every Book of Mormon. Instead of the introduction page, the Book of Mormon began with the testimony of the first witness. Well, what is that? Oh, I know, because I went and checked, and it's gone. Okay? It's been taken out. The testimony of the first witness was Joseph Smith's testimony of what he saw, word for word, in one page of the first vision. Why he was there, what he was doing, what happened to him, then what happened. With an affirmation and a swearing of truth. Even in accordance with his eternal existence, that it was true. And he would never deny it. The junior companion kind of didn't say anything. He just looked to the senior one. The senior companion began reading out of the book, but it was strange to me. I was watching his eyes, and he wasn't reading. He was reciting, and I noticed this. And he looked up at me while he was still talking, and then he just closed that book and sat it in his lap, and he was on maybe the third sentence. He recited that entire page from memory in perfect cadence. I thought that was very interesting. And at the time, I knew immediately these weren't just missionaries. Not your regular run-of-the-mill ones, anyway. These were missionaries of an order of greatness. They had a missionary outfit. They had a suit. They had a tag. They were very interesting. So I kind of looked at him like this. The younger one, when that book closed and he sat it in his lap, he looked at me like this, and he kind of went like this, and then he looked at the older companion, very concerned, and the older companion just kind of looked at him, and he just nodded. The younger one just kind of looked down. He didn't look at me. So I studied this as it happened. Well, he completed it, and of what he said and recited, I absolutely knew that that was true. I knew Joseph Smith went to the grove. I knew that he began to pray. I knew that he was attacked by forces of darkness. And I understood that because I've been dealing with that myself. I knew exactly what he was talking about. Darkness can bind you up and confound you and even swallow you if you let it. So I understood that. Joseph Smith also said that there was a bright light appearing directly above his head, and it had brightness above that of the sun at noonday. I've only seen that kind of thing twice. Once was when paradise opened to me, and I saw those who were in it, including Joseph Smith. They look really good, by the way. And Kristen was hand in hand. The other was when Lucifer revealed, which was a very interesting thing. And I only saw the light showing through under a barrier. But the same kind, for sure. But I digress. Joseph Smith said he saw two personages ascending down. He later understood one was God the Father, Elohim, who said to him, Joseph Smith, "Here is my beloved Son, hear him." And he listened. And his Son was Jesus Christ. And there may be no counterfeit of Jesus Christ. Not for what he is and what he did and what he will do. No counterfeit. Many things were discussed, even throughout the day. And if you're viewing and you have locked on to that, the Sacred Grove, you are now in a position where you cannot deny it either. Not and live. What else was said? I know something of it, but I will never say it. And neither will you. The two missionaries completed that. And like Joseph Smith, they bore their testimonies. Short and sweet, though. And after all of that, I was just very, very interested in these two guys. Like, okay. I looked at them with very knowing eyes, and I wanted to know. I said, and I know that if they were from where I think they were from, they cannot lie in an answer to this question. And I said, okay, guys, where are both of you from? The younger one kind of like looks at the older one. The older one just kind of goes like that. He goes, Canada. I go, both of you are from Canada. And he goes, yeah. What are the odds that you get two Texas missionaries in Lubbock and Amarillo, Texas, from the same place in Canada? These were definitely the other two of the three Nephites. And I knew it. And they knew I knew it. And if you're viewing, well, damn sure you know it too. Meaning, you have three guys in their prime walking around right now, alive and well. And these three personally know Jesus Christ in the flesh, in his resurrected form. Yes, they do. And it shows, doesn't it? That's pretty significant. And I wanted to shake their hands. And I did. I reached out and I said, can I shake your hand? Can I shake your hand? Like, okay. I shook their hands. Very strong hands. Very tanned. Very tan. Both of them. And the younger companion, he kind of gave me a smile. He's like, okay. And they were abrupt in it, but they said, we have to leave now. Okay. And I followed them to the door, because that's what I did as, a good host. And I opened the door for them, and I let them out, and I said, they were on their way down the stairs, and I just watched them go. The younger one looked back at me, and he had big eyes, okay? I said, hey guys, and they turned around, I said, hey guys, I said, don't forget about me, okay? And older one was like, oh, well, we won't. And then they walked off into the night. They didn't have a car, and they didn't have bikes. They just walked away. That is who they were, all three of them. And that was the context in which I met them. And unless you're viewing, you're never going to know what they look like. I'm never going to tell. But I just want to bear my testimony that I know Jesus Christ lives. He has healed me I've never seen him in the flesh, but I know his spirit and I know contact with it. And in my worst crippling pain, he healed me of that. I have more pain afterward, but for other reasons. Of the pain that was absolutely crippling to me, I was healed of that in early 2021 during my other very intensive spiritual combat, which was indeed quite deadly. But I know that this church is his church. I know it's the correct one to be at. If you seek to know Jesus Christ, this is the door you enter through. And eventually, you will find yourself at the gate. And he will be standing there in front of the bridge. And if you don't know what that means, pray and ask, do some studying. Because there is only one way off of this sinking ship. It is going to sink, but first it's going to burn. That is all of creation. Not soon, but it will, because it's going to naturally die, and it is going to be at the end of all that which is natural, even the limit of limits. Nothing and no one can continue on into the next eternity except by Jesus Christ, who will choose by your choices and your decisions and your acceptance of him whether you may live in heaven. And for Jesus, I am a direct report. And I am here to prep the field and make my evaluations. And I am at liberty to perform all my job functions that have been given to me at his direction. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Hemahem, Amen. Amen. I love you all. Have a good day.